"Officer, if you open that briefcase, your day is about to get a lot more complicated." The words should have sounded like a warning. Instead, Officer Ryan Mitchell heard them as a challenge. The late afternoon sun reflected off the glass towers of downtown Charlotte, turning the sidewalks into strips of gold and shadow. Traffic crawled along Trade Street. Horns echoed in the distance. Dozens of people moved between office buildings, coffee shops, and parking garages, each carrying their own worries into the cooling September evening. Yet for a brief moment, everything seemed to slow around the woman standing beside the black SUV. Ryan tightened his grip on the leather briefcase he had just taken from her hands. Ava Richardson stood calmly a few feet away. She wore a navy business suit beneath a light gray coat, the kind of professional attire that blended into the city without drawing attention. Her posture remained straight. Her expression remained composed. Even with curious pedestrians beginning to gather nearby, she showed no signs of panic. That irritated Ryan more than he wanted to admit. Most people became nervous when questioned by police. Most people started explaining themselves before being asked. Ava Richardson simply watched him. "You're matching the description," Ryan said firmly. "Until I sort this out, you're staying right here." A few people stopped walking. A man carrying a takeout bag slowed his pace. Two college students exchanged glances and quietly pulled out their phones. Somewhere across the street, a bus released a long hiss of air as passengers stepped onto the curb. Ava folded her hands in front of her. "Officer Mitchell," she said evenly, reading the name stitched above his badge. "I've already explained that you have the wrong person." Ryan frowned. The fact that she sounded so calm made him even more convinced she was hiding something. Minutes earlier, Dispatch had broadcast a report involving a female suspect connected to a financial fraud investigation. The description had been vague. Female, African American, mid-30s, business attire, carrying a briefcase. Ryan had spotted Ava exiting a parking garage less than 3 blocks away. To him, the pieces fit together perfectly. Maybe too perfectly. But he wasn't thinking about that now. He was thinking about procedure. He was thinking about certainty. He was thinking about being right. "Then you won't mind if I take a look?" Ryan replied. Ava's eyes shifted briefly toward the briefcase. Not fear. Not anxiety. Something else. Almost disappointment. "I mind very much," she answered. "But I suspect you've already decided what you want to believe." The small crowd continued growing. A woman wearing a hospital badge stopped near the corner. A delivery driver leaned against his truck. More phones appeared. More eyes focused on the scene. Ryan ignored them. Experience had taught him that confidence mattered. Hesitation invited doubt. Doubt invited questions. So he pushed forward. "Funny thing about assumptions," Ava said quietly. "They usually cost someone more than they expect." Ryan released a short laugh. "And what exactly is that supposed to mean?" Ava glanced toward the skyline where the sun was beginning its descent behind the buildings. Orange light reflected across the polished surface of the briefcase. "Nothing," she said. "You'll find out soon enough." Something about the answer unsettled him. Not because it sounded threatening. It didn't. It sounded certain. Completely certain. The kind of certainty that comes from someone who already knows how the story ends. Ryan shook off the feeling. He had dealt with attorneys before. Executives. Politicians. People who thought expensive suits placed them above ordinary rules. This felt no different. Yet as he looked at Ava again, he noticed something unusual. She wasn't trying to stop him. She wasn't arguing. She wasn't pleading. She wasn't even angry. It was as if she had already accepted what was about to happen. Across the street, the reflection of flashing patrol lights bounced against a row of windows. The crowd had grown large enough now that conversations were beginning to spread. Questions floated through the air. Speculation followed. Ryan felt every eye on him. Every camera pointed toward him. Every expectation pushing him toward action. Ava slowly exhaled. "Last chance. Officer." Ryan looked down at the briefcase. The black leather showed signs of age, but had been meticulously maintained. Silver clasps gleamed beneath the fading sunlight. Whatever was inside had enough weight to make the case noticeably heavy. Important documents, perhaps. Financial records. Maybe evidence connecting her to the report. Maybe proof that his instincts had been right all along. He placed the briefcase on the hood of his patrol car. The metallic surface reflected both his face and hers. One determined. One patient. The city noise seemed to fade. Conversations softened. Even the traffic felt distant. Ryan reached for the latch. Ava said nothing. She simply watched. And for the first time since the encounter began, a strange feeling crept into the back of his mind. Not doubt. Not yet. Just the faint sensation that somewhere, somehow, he had stepped into a story he did not fully understand. Ava Richardson had learned long ago that the loudest people in a room were rarely the most dangerous. The truly dangerous ones were usually quiet. They smiled at the right moments. They shook hands firmly. They spoke about integrity while hiding secrets beneath polished surfaces. That lesson had followed her through 15 years in the legal system, from crowded courtrooms to late-night investigations and conference rooms where careers could rise or collapse in a single conversation. Standing beside the patrol car, she found herself thinking about that lesson again. Ryan Mitchell stared at the briefcase as though it contained the answer to a question he had already decided he understood. The irony was almost painful. 3 hours earlier, Ava had been seated inside a federal office building 6 blocks away. The meeting had lasted nearly 90 minutes. No reporters had been present. No public records existed. Only 5 people knew what had been discussed behind those closed doors. One of them was now missing. A cool breeze swept between the buildings, carrying the scent of rain even though the sky remained clear. Ava slipped her hands into the pockets of her coat and watched reflections dance across the glass towers surrounding Trade Street. Her mind replayed the events of the afternoon. The witness had been nervous from the moment he arrived. He had checked every hallway before entering the conference room. He had refused coffee, refused water, refused to sit with his back toward the door. For nearly an hour, he had described a pattern of misconduct buried beneath years of paperwork and administrative language. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just small decisions made repeatedly by powerful people who believed nobody was paying attention. Ava had listened carefully. She always listened carefully. Then, 20 minutes before the meeting ended, the witness had received a text message. Everything changed after that. His face lost color. His hands began to shake. He apologized, stood up, and said he needed fresh air. He never came back. At first, nobody thought much of it. Then his phone stopped answering. Then his car was discovered untouched in the parking garage. Then dispatch reports started appearing across the city faster than anyone could explain. Ava had left the building carrying the only physical copies of several critical documents. She had planned to drive directly to another secure location. Instead, she found herself standing beside a patrol car while strangers recorded videos from the sidewalk. The timing bothered her. It bothered her more than she was willing to admit. Ryan shifted his weight and glanced briefly toward the crowd. Confidence still covered his face, but cracks were beginning to appear around the edges. Ava recognized the signs. She had questioned hundreds of witnesses over the years. People often revealed themselves before they spoke a single word. The brief tightening of a jaw, the hesitation before eye contact, the subtle uncertainty hiding beneath practiced authority. Something was changing. Across the street, office workers continued emerging from buildings as the workday ended. Their conversations blended into a distant hum. A siren echoed several blocks away before fading into the city. The world kept moving. Yet the small circle surrounding the patrol car felt strangely isolated, as though time had slowed within it. Ava looked at the briefcase again. Inside were reports, interview, transcripts, signed statements, and photographs. More importantly, there were names. Names connected to decisions. Names connected to favors. Names connected to careers built upon silence. She did not know whether Ryan Mitchell recognized any of those names. She suspected he did not. But she knew one thing with certainty. The moment that latch opened, the story would become much larger than either of them expected. Ryan finally placed both hands on the case. The metal clasps reflected the last rays of sunlight. Nearby conversations faded into anticipation. Even the people holding phones seemed to stop breathing for a second. Ava remained perfectly still. She had spent years uncovering hidden truths. Now another one was seconds away from revealing itself. Ryan Mitchell had always trusted his instincts. 12 years in uniform had taught him that hesitation could become a mistake and uncertainty could become regret. That belief had carried him through countless shifts, endless reports, and long nights patrolling streets that never seemed to sleep. Standing beside the patrol car, he reminded himself of that fact again. The city around him might be watching, but he was still the officer responsible for making decisions. He glanced once more at Ava Richardson. She stood exactly where she had been moments earlier. Calm, silent, unmoved by the growing audience surrounding them. The confidence bothered him. Most people tried to explain themselves. Most people wanted to prove they belonged. Ava seemed completely uninterested in convincing anyone of anything. Ryan told himself it was arrogance. Yet another part of him was beginning to wonder if it was something else entirely. A notification crackled through his shoulder radio before fading into static. Dispatch traffic continued somewhere in the background. Officers were responding to calls throughout the city. Life continued moving. But Ryan found it harder to focus on those familiar sounds. His attention kept returning to the briefcase resting on the hood of the patrol car. Something about the situation felt increasingly unusual. The original report had arrived quickly. Too quickly. A witness statement. A matching description. A possible suspect moving through downtown. At the time it had sounded straightforward. Now, standing beneath dozens of curious eyes, he realized how little information he actually possessed. Across the sidewalk, a reporter from a local station appeared near the edge of the crowd. Ryan recognized the logo on her microphone. That made him straighten instinctively. News crews never arrived this fast unless somebody tipped them off. He frowned. The thought lingered longer than he expected. Somebody had known where to look. Somebody had known something was about to happen. Ava seemed to notice the same thing. Her gaze drifted briefly toward the reporter before returning to the briefcase. Still no panic. Still no anger. Just patience. The kind of patience that came from someone waiting for an inevitable outcome. Ryan looked away. He did not like the direction of his thoughts. He preferred facts, procedure, evidence, clear answers. Yet the facts were becoming harder to organize. The witness who made the report remained unidentified. The details had been incomplete. The timeline felt rushed. Even the description had been broad enough to fit dozens of professionals leaving downtown offices at rush hour. A cool gust of wind swept along the street. Paper rustled near the curb. Somewhere above, sunlight reflected from a glass skyscraper and flashed across the metal clasps of the briefcase. Ryan narrowed his eyes. For a split second, he noticed a small embossed seal near the handle. It looked official. Government issue perhaps. He leaned slightly closer. Ava finally spoke. "You are asking the wrong question, officer." Ryan looked up. "And what question should I be asking?" Her expression remained composed. "Not who I am." Ryan folded his arms. "Then what?" Ava glanced toward the crowd. "You should be asking why this happened today." The answer irritated him because it touched a concern he had already begun to feel. Why today? Why here? Why had everything aligned so perfectly? Before he could respond, his phone vibrated inside his pocket. He pulled it out. A message from another officer appeared across the screen. Simple, brief, unexpected. Do not release anyone until command reviews the situation. Ryan read the message twice. No explanation followed. No context. Just instructions. His jaw tightened. Command rarely involved itself this quickly in routine field encounters. Around him, the city seemed quieter than before. The crowd sensed something changing. Conversations softened. Phones remained raised. Ava watched him read the message, and for the first time a trace of sadness crossed her face. Not satisfaction. Not triumph. Sadness. As though she already knew where the road ahead would lead. Ryan slipped the phone back into his pocket and looked down at the briefcase once more. Every instinct told him to continue. Every instinct told him the answer was waiting inside. Yet for the first time since this encounter began, certainty felt farther away than ever. Ryan stared at the briefcase for several long seconds. The message from command still lingered in his mind like an unanswered question. Around him, the crowd continued to grow. More people stopped. More phones appeared. The reporter near the curb quietly spoke into her microphone while a cameraman adjusted his lens. What had started as a routine stop no longer felt routine. Still, backing away now would raise even more questions. He looked toward Ava. "You keep talking like you know something I do not." Ava met his gaze without hesitation. "I know that assumptions have consequences." Ryan exhaled slowly. "And I know that avoiding answers does not help your situation." A faint smile touched the corner of her mouth. Not amusement. Not confidence. Something closer to disappointment. "Officer Mitchell," she said quietly, "there are moments in life when people reveal who they are. This is one of those moments." The words settled heavily in the air. Ryan immediately disliked them. They sounded less like a warning and more like a prediction. He turned his attention back to the briefcase. The polished leather reflected the fading sunlight. Years of use had softened its edges, but it remained carefully maintained. Whoever carried it clearly valued what was inside. Ryan placed one hand on the top and examined the silver clasps more closely. The embossed seal near the handle caught his attention again. It was definitely official. Government issue. Yet before he could study it further, another vibration came from his phone. This time it was not a text. It was a call. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number. Ryan hesitated. Then he answered. Mitchell. A brief silence followed. Then a voice spoke. Calm. Professional. Officer, this is Deputy Chief Warren's office. We need clarification regarding an incident downtown. Ryan straightened immediately. Yes, sir. Who initiated the stop? Ryan glanced toward Ava. I did. Another pause. Longer this time. Based on what information? The question seemed simple enough, but suddenly Ryan realized he did not have a clean answer. Dispatch information. A witness report. A matching description. Yet as he mentally assembled the facts, they sounded weaker than before. Officer, the voice prompted. A suspect description was broadcast, Ryan replied. I believe the individual matched. Silence returned again. Somewhere in the distance a siren echoed between buildings. The city lights were beginning to switch on one by one. We are reviewing several developments, the voice finally said. Remain where you are until further notice. The line disconnected. Ryan lowered the phone slowly. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He could feel it now. The certainty that had guided him earlier was fading with every passing minute. Ava watched him carefully. Interesting conversation? She asked. Ryan ignored the question. Instead, he focused on the briefcase. If answers existed, they were inside. He could feel the pressure building from every direction. The crowd expected action. The reporter expected a story. Command expected information. Even his own instincts demanded closure. Finally, he reached for the first clasp. A metallic click broke through the evening noise. Conversations immediately quieted. Several people stepped closer. Ava remained perfectly still. Ryan released the second clasp. Another click. The sound seemed louder than it should have been. The briefcase was now unlocked. Yet for some reason he hesitated. His hand rested on the lid. The city around him appeared frozen between daylight and darkness. Golden reflections stretched across office windows. Traffic lights shifted from green to yellow. A cool breeze moved through the street. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Ava's expression softened slightly. There is still time to ask a different question, she said. Ryan looked at her. What question? Ava's eyes held his for a moment. Who wanted this to happen? The words struck him harder than he expected. Not because they answered anything. Because they revealed a possibility he had not fully considered. What if this stop had never been about Ava at all? What if someone had wanted this exact scene? The crowd. The cameras. The confusion. The timing. Every piece suddenly seemed connected to something larger. Ryan felt a chill despite the warm evening air. Slowly, he lifted the lid of the briefcase and looked inside. For a moment, Ryan saw nothing unusual. A stack of folders rested neatly inside the briefcase. Several sealed envelopes sat beneath them. A tablet computer occupied one side compartment. Everything appeared organized with almost meticulous precision. Then his eyes settled on the first folder. The cover was dark blue. Across the front, stamped in bold silver lettering, were two words that instantly tightened his chest. Confidential review. Ryan frowned and lifted the folder slightly. The weight felt substantial. Official. Important. Beneath the title sat the seal of the state attorney's office. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Even people standing several feet away recognized the government insignia. Ryan opened the folder. The first page displayed a formal case heading. The second contained interview summaries. The third contained financial records. By the fourth page, his confidence had begun to erode. This was not the property of a suspect. This was the property of an active legal investigation. His eyes moved faster. Names appeared. Dates. Internal memorandums. Correspondence. Oversight reports. The deeper he looked, the worse the feeling became. He lowered the folder and stared at Ava. She remained calm. Now you understand why I asked you to think carefully, she said. Ryan swallowed. What exactly is this? Ava answered without hesitation. Evidence. The word landed heavily. Around them, phones continued recording. The reporter stepped slightly closer. Her cameraman adjusted focus. Ryan looked back into the briefcase. Another folder caught his attention. This one carried a red stripe across the top. He opened it. His pulse immediately accelerated. The documents inside referenced ongoing reviews involving public officials, procurement contracts, administrative approvals, and departmental oversight procedures. The names attached to those records were not small names. They belonged to people with influence. People who appeared on television. People who attended charity galas and city council meetings. People who rarely found themselves under scrutiny. Ryan felt the first hint of perspiration along his forehead. The evening air had grown cooler, yet suddenly he felt warm. Very warm. He continued turning pages. Then he stopped. One document near the center of the folder held a familiar seal. His own department. Charlotte Metropolitan Police Department. His eyes narrowed. He read the title once. Then again. The words did not change. Internal Conduct Assessment. His mouth went dry. Slowly, he scanned the list attached beneath the heading. Several names appeared. Officers. Supervisors. Administrative personnel. Some names he recognized immediately. Others belonged to people he had only met in passing. The implications hit him all at once. This investigation was larger than he imagined. Far larger. Ava watched his reaction carefully. "You were never the target," she said quietly. Ryan looked up. "What?" "You were never the reason those files exist." Her voice carried no anger, no satisfaction, only truth. But someone wanted this investigation interrupted. The crowd had become completely silent now. Even the reporter seemed more interested in listening than speaking. Ryan glanced toward the street. Suddenly, he noticed details he had overlooked before. The unusually fast media arrival. The anonymous witness report. The vague suspect description. The timing. Every piece now pointed toward the same possibility. Someone had created a distraction. Someone had wanted Ava delayed. Someone had wanted access to the evidence inside the briefcase. A chill moved through him despite the lingering warmth of the day. "The witness disappeared," Ava said softly. Ryan looked back at her. "What witness?" "The one I met this afternoon." She paused. "The one who became frightened after receiving a message." Ryan felt his stomach tighten. The missing witness. The rushed dispatch report. The command calls. None of it looked random anymore. It looked coordinated. His gaze returned to the briefcase. Then he saw something that made his heart sink even further. A white envelope rested beneath the folders. Across the front, typed in clean black letters, appeared a single line. "In the event of interference." Ryan stared at the envelope without moving. The city lights flickered on behind him. Glass towers reflected the deepening blue of the evening sky. Traffic continued flowing through downtown Charlotte. Yet standing beside that patrol car, surrounded by cameras and strangers, Ryan suddenly realized he was no longer looking at a routine encounter. He was standing in the middle of a story that had begun long before he arrived, and every decision he had made since stepping onto that sidewalk had pushed him deeper into it. The envelope seemed ordinary at first glance. Plain white paper. Clean edges. No official seal. Yet Ryan could not stop staring at it. Something about its placement inside the briefcase felt deliberate, almost as if it had been left there for a specific moment. For a specific person. The crowd remained unusually quiet. The city continued moving around them, but the noise felt distant now, softened by the growing weight of what was unfolding. Ryan carefully picked up the envelope. It was heavier than he expected. He looked toward Ava. She stood beneath the glow of a nearby street lamp, her expression calm and unreadable. "Have you opened this?" he asked. Ava shook her head. "No, you do not know what is inside. I know who placed it there." Ryan felt a chill travel through him. "The missing witness?" Ava nodded once. He slipped it into the briefcase shortly before he disappeared. The words settled heavily between them. Ryan looked back at the envelope. His fingers suddenly felt clumsy. The confidence that had guided him through the entire encounter was gone now, replaced by something unfamiliar. Caution. He opened the flap and removed a folded document. A single sheet. Nothing more. Yet the moment he unfolded it, his pulse quickened. At the top of the page sat a date. Today's date. Beneath it was a short statement typed in precise black letters. "If this document is being read, my identity has likely been compromised." Ryan swallowed. The evening air seemed colder than before. He continued reading. The witness described a network of coordinated communications between multiple individuals. Messages, meetings, requests. Not dramatic crimes. Not sensational headlines. Something far more dangerous. Influence. Quiet influence. The ability to redirect investigations, delay inquiries, and steer attention away from sensitive information. Ryan felt the muscles in his jaw tighten. The document named no criminals. It made no accusations. Instead, it described patterns, behaviors, decisions repeated often enough to become invisible. Yet one sentence stood apart from the rest. It had been highlighted in yellow. The next attempt to interfere will happen in public because public attention creates confusion. Ryan stared at the words. Slowly, the realization settled over him. The witness had predicted this. Not perfectly, not specifically, but close enough to send a chill through his entire body. He lowered the paper and looked toward the reporter, then toward the crowd, then toward the cameras pointed in every direction. Public attention, confusion, exactly as the document described. Ava noticed the change in his expression. "Now you see it," she said quietly. Ryan nodded without meaning to. For the first time since the stop began, he was no longer thinking about procedures or reports. He was thinking about consequences. Someone had wanted Ava delayed. Someone had wanted the evidence exposed, or destroyed, or discredited. He did not know which possibility was worse. A black SUV turned the corner and rolled slowly toward the curb. Its tinted windows reflected the city lights. The vehicle stopped less than 20 feet away. Several heads in the crowd turned immediately. The reporter lowered her microphone. Even Ava seemed surprised. The rear passenger door opened. A man in a dark suit stepped out. Silver hair, calm posture, professional presence. Ryan recognized him instantly from department briefings and city events. Deputy Chief Harold Warren, the same office that had called minutes earlier. Warren adjusted his jacket and looked directly at Ryan, then at Ava, then at the open briefcase. His expression revealed nothing. Yet something about his arrival felt wrong. Very wrong. Ava's eyes narrowed slightly. Ryan noticed it immediately. "You know him?" he asked. Ava did not answer right away. Her gaze remained fixed on Warren as he began walking toward them through the crowd. Finally, she spoke. "Yes." Ryan felt his stomach tighten. "From where?" Ava took a slow breath. The streetlights reflected softly across the folders inside the briefcase. "From the investigation." Ryan felt the air leave his lungs. Deputy Chief Harold Warren continued walking toward the patrol car with the calm confidence of a man accustomed to being respected the moment he entered a room. The crowd instinctively parted to make space for him. Cameras followed his movement. Reporters exchanged quick glances. Yet Warren never looked at them. His attention remained fixed on the open briefcase. The expression on his face lasted only a fraction of a second, but Ryan saw it clearly. Surprise. Real surprise. Then it vanished behind practiced professionalism. "Officer Mitchell," Warren said as he approached. "I appreciate your cooperation." Ryan said nothing. His mind was racing too quickly. Warren's eyes shifted toward Ava. "Ms. Richardson." Ava held his gaze. "Deputy Chief." The exchange sounded polite on the surface, but something deeper moved beneath it. Ryan could feel it. Years of courtroom experience had taught Ava how to conceal emotion. Years of public service had taught Warren the same skill. Yet neither looked comfortable. The streetlights cast long reflections across the hood of the patrol car. Somewhere nearby, a train horn echoed through the city. Nobody in the crowd seemed willing to leave. Everyone sensed that something important was unfolding. Warren glanced at the folders inside the briefcase. "This situation has become unnecessarily public." Ava folded her arms. "That was not my decision." Warren nodded slowly. "No, apparently not." Ryan studied both of them carefully. The more he listened, the more obvious it became that they were speaking around something neither wanted to say openly. Finally, he stepped forward. "You are part of the investigation?" Warren looked at him. For the first time all evening, the deputy chief appeared tired. Not old, not weak, just tired. "I was one of the people who requested it." Ryan blinked. "What?" A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. Even the reporter lowered her microphone. Warren turned toward Ava. "Tell him." Ava remained silent for several seconds. Then she slowly removed a dark leather credential holder from her coat pocket. Ryan watched as she opened it. The gold badge inside caught the light immediately. Beside it sat an official identification card bearing her photograph and title. State Attorney. Ryan stared at the credentials. The words seemed impossible despite sitting directly in front of him. Every assumption he had made that afternoon collapsed at once. The suspect, the briefcase, the stop, the warnings. None of it had been what he believed. Ava closed the credential holder. The investigation began 8 months ago, she said calmly. A series of irregularities appeared across multiple agencies. Procurement approvals, internal reviews, administrative delays. Nothing dramatic individually, but together they formed a pattern. Warren nodded. A pattern that concerned me enough to request independent oversight. Ryan looked between them. You asked for an investigation into your own department? Into every department connected to the complaints, Warren answered, including my own office. The crowd erupted into whispers. Phones tilted closer. Reporters exchanged excited looks. Ryan barely heard them. His attention remained fixed on the 2 people standing before him. Then why keep everything secret, he asked. Ava answered immediately. Because every time information moved through official channels, someone seemed to know about it beforehand. Ryan remembered the missing witness, the anonymous report, the sudden media presence. The pieces finally aligned. The witness was right, he murmured. Ava nodded. Someone expected interference. Warren looked at the open briefcase. And judging by tonight, someone was willing to create it. Silence settled over the group. Ryan glanced down at the folders again, then at the credential holder, then back at Ava. The realization hit him harder than anything else had all evening. She had warned him repeatedly. She had given him every opportunity to slow down, every opportunity to ask better questions. Instead, he had trusted a rushed description and his own assumptions. Across the street, the last traces of sunlight disappeared behind the skyline. Downtown Charlotte glowed beneath thousands of electric lights. Ryan stood motionless beside the patrol car, staring at the woman he had completely misjudged. For the first time all day, he understood the truth. The biggest mistake had never been opening the briefcase. The biggest mistake had happened long before that, the moment he decided he already knew who Ava Richardson was. The realization settled over Ryan like a weight he could not shake. The crowd continued whispering around them, but their voices seemed distant now, swallowed by the steady hum of downtown traffic and the soft glow of city lights reflecting across glass towers. For several seconds nobody spoke. Ava stood quietly beside the patrol car, while Deputy Chief Warren watched the crowd with measured caution. Then Warren turned toward Ava. The witness contacted us 30 minutes ago, he said. Ava's eyes widened slightly. It was the first genuine surprise Ryan had seen from her all evening. He is safe? She asked. Warren nodded. Shaken, but safe. He realized someone was monitoring his movements and went off the grid before they could reach him. A breath Ryan had not realized he was holding slowly escaped his chest. The missing witness, the anonymous report, the confusion. At least one part of the story had not ended badly. Warren glanced toward the cameras surrounding them. The interference worked against itself, he said. Whoever wanted attention diverted ended up creating more attention than they expected. Ava looked down at the open briefcase. The folders remained exactly where Ryan had left them. Evidence. Testimony. Months of work resting beneath the glow of a street lamp. Sometimes that happens, she said quietly. The truth has a strange way of surviving. Ryan lowered his eyes. Shame lingered heavily inside him. He replayed the entire encounter from the beginning. The rushed assumptions. The confidence. The certainty. Every step now seemed painfully obvious. He had been so focused on proving himself right that he never stopped to consider whether he might be wrong. Finally, he looked at Ava. I owe you an apology. The crowd became silent again. Several reporters immediately pointed microphones closer. Ava glanced toward them before returning her attention to Ryan. For what exactly? She asked. The question caught him off guard. Ryan hesitated. For making assumptions. Ava studied him carefully. That is part of it. Ryan nodded slowly. And for not listening. For the first time all evening, a faint warmth appeared in Ava's expression. Not satisfaction. Not victory. Understanding. That is a better answer. Ryan looked away briefly. The city lights reflected across the hood of the patrol car. I thought experience meant I knew what I was looking at. Ava folded her arms against the cool evening air. Experience is valuable, she said. But experience becomes dangerous when it stops asking questions. The words landed deeper than any criticism could have. Warren remained silent, allowing the conversation to unfold. Around them, people continued recording. Yet the mood had changed. Earlier the crowd had expected confrontation. Now they were witnessing something else entirely. Reflection. Accountability. Ryan glanced at the badge holder in Ava's hand. You could make this very difficult for me. Ava followed his gaze. I could. Ryan nodded. And honestly, I would deserve that. A small breeze moved through the street, carrying the scent of approaching rain. Ava looked toward the skyline for a moment before answering. The purpose of justice is not humiliation. Ryan blinked. Ava continued. The investigation was never about destroying people. It was about protecting trust. If we lose that, nothing else matters. Those words seemed to affect Warren as well. The deputy chief lowered his eyes briefly before looking back toward the crowd. Ryan felt something shift inside him. All evening he had expected consequences to arrive in the form of punishment. Instead, the person he had treated unfairly was offering something far more difficult. Grace. Not because she ignored what happened. Not because she excused it. Because she believed the lesson mattered more than the embarrassment. The city clock tower several blocks away chimed the hour. The sound echoed softly through downtown Charlotte. Ava carefully closed the briefcase and secured the clasps. Then she looked directly at Ryan. What happens next is your choice, Officer Mitchell. 3 months later, autumn sunlight poured through the tall windows of the Charlotte Regional Training Center, painting long golden rectangles across the polished floor. The room smelled faintly of fresh coffee, paper, and newly printed manuals. Rows of recruits sat quietly at their desks, listening as instructors moved through the morning curriculum. On the far wall hung a simple plaque engraved with a sentence that had become part of the department's updated training program. Justice begins when assumptions end. Ryan Mitchell looked at the plaque every day. He never walked past it without remembering that evening downtown. The crowd, the cameras, the briefcase, the realization. Some lessons arrived slowly over years. Others arrived all at once. That one had changed him forever. He stood near the back of the classroom reviewing reports while a group of recruits discussed case studies involving judgment, procedure, and public trust. Their conversations reminded him of himself years earlier. Confident, certain, eager to prove they could read situations quickly. Yet now he understood something he had not understood then. Confidence without humility was dangerous. Experience without reflection was incomplete. Outside the windows, leaves drifted through cool October air. Downtown, Charlotte shimmered beneath clear blue skies. Life had continued after that night. The investigation had continued as well. The missing witness eventually provided testimony. The review uncovered problems that required correction, but it also confirmed something important. Most people within the system were trying to do the right thing. The challenge was making sure trust remained stronger than assumptions. Deputy Chief Warren had publicly supported the reforms recommended by the oversight team. His decision surprised many people. It earned criticism from some and respect from others. Ava Richardson continued her work exactly as she always had. Quietly, thoroughly, without seeking attention. Ryan had seen her only twice since that evening. The first time was during a formal meeting. The second was entirely by chance outside a courthouse several weeks earlier. Neither conversation lasted long, yet both remained in his mind, especially the final words she spoke before walking away. What happens next is your choice. At the time, he thought she was talking about the investigation. Later he realized she was talking about something much larger. Character. The door at the front of the classroom opened softly. A young recruit entered carrying a stack of folders. Nervous, slightly late, apologizing before anyone even asked for an explanation. Several classmates exchanged amused smiles. Ryan recognized the expression immediately because he had seen it hundreds of times before. Someone making a quick judgment about someone else. He stepped forward and took half the folders from the recruit's arms. Take a breath, he said calmly. You are fine. The recruit smiled with visible relief. Thank you, sir. Ryan nodded and helped distribute the materials. A small moment. An ordinary moment. Yet moments like that mattered. The classroom eventually emptied for lunch. Conversations faded down the hallway. Doors closed. Silence returned. Ryan remained behind for a few minutes, organizing paperwork. Sunlight continued streaming across the floor. Warm, quiet, peaceful. His eyes drifted once more toward the plaque on the wall. Justice begins when assumptions end. The words no longer felt like a slogan. They felt like a responsibility. Across town, Ava Richardson exited the state attorney's office carrying the same black briefcase. The leather still showed signs of wear. The silver clasps still reflected sunlight. She paused briefly at the top of the courthouse steps and looked toward the city skyline. People hurried past her. Traffic moved steadily below. Nobody paid special attention to the woman standing there. She seemed perfectly comfortable with that. A gentle breeze lifted a few strands of hair across her face. She smiled softly, adjusted her grip on the briefcase, and continued walking. The city moved around her exactly as it always had. Yet somewhere within that movement, trust had been strengthened. Not because someone won, not because someone lost, because one person chose integrity when she had every reason to be angry, and another chose growth when it would have been easier to remain unchanged. The afternoon sun reflected from the courthouse windows, casting light across the sidewalk ahead. Ava walked forward without looking back. Behind her, the glass doors closed quietly. Ahead of her, the city stretched into the distance, bright and full of possibility. And in the gentle silence that followed, justice needed no further explanation.